Good morning, afternoon. Have you ever found yourself questioning why someone would intentionally hurt you? It stings, doesn't it? The weight of that act can feel like a betrayal of trust, a wound that cuts deeper because it wasn't accidental. But today I want to invite you to look beyond the pain and into the heart of what it means to rise above it. When someone hurts you intentionally, it says more about them than it does about you. Their actions are often rooted in their own struggles, fears, insecurities, and unhealed wounds. And yet, even knowing this doesn't take away the pain. But it does offer a choice. Will you let their pain become your prison, or will you choose a different path? When someone hurts us intentionally, it feels deeply personal. The sting of such actions often runs deeper than mere misunderstandings or accidents, leaving us questioning our worth, the trust we placed in that person, and even the world around us. It's important to unpack what intentional harm truly means, not just to understand it, but to begin the process of moving past it. Intentional harm is deliberate. It is the choice someone makes to inflict pain physically, emotionally, or psychologically. This deliberate nature makes it distinct from accidental actions. And that's precisely why it hurts so much more. There's an implicit question that accompanies intentional harm. Why would someone do this to me? We often internalize the pain, convincing ourselves that we must have done something to deserve it, or that we're somehow at fault. But here's a critical truth to remember. Most of the time when someone chooses to hurt you, it's not about you at all. It's about them. It's about their unresolved issues, their insecurities, or their need to exert control or power. People who inflict harm intentionally are often grappling with their own wounds. Perhaps they've been hurt before and haven't found a way to heal, so they perpetuate a cycle of pain. Perhaps they feel powerless in some area of their lives, and hurting someone else is their misguided attempt to reclaim that power. Understanding this doesn't mean excusing their behavior. Far from it. Acknowledging the root of their actions is not the same as justifying them. It's about shifting the focus away from self-blame. It's about recognizing that their actions reflect their character, not your value. Intentional harm can also stem from societal influences. We live in a world where competition, comparison, and judgment are often prioritized over connection and understanding. Some people see relationships as a zero-sum game, believing that for them to win, someone else must lose. This mindset can lead to deliberate acts of sabotage, betrayal, or cruelty. Again, this isn't about the victim's worth, it's about the perpetrator's worldview and how they've been shaped by their environment or past experiences. One of the hardest parts of understanding intentional harm is resisting the urge to retaliate. When we're hurt, it's natural to want to lash out, to give back what we've received. But this only keeps us trapped in the cycle of pain. It allows the person who hurt us to dictate our actions, our emotions, and even our identity. True strength lies in breaking free from that cycle by understanding the harm for what it is and choosing not to let it define us. Finally, understanding intentional harm helps us grow. It doesn't mean we have to tolerate it or accept it in our lives, but it gives us a framework for processing it. We learn to separate the act from our sense of self-worth. We learn to set boundaries, to say this is not okay, and to walk away when necessary. And most importantly, we learn to protect our hearts without hardening them, to remain compassionate without being naive. In understanding intentional harm, we take the first step toward healing. We reclaim the narrative, shifting the focus from what's wrong with me to what's happening within them. In doing so, we free ourselves from the grip of their actions and start to pave the way toward our own resilience and strength. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. Many people see it as a weakness, a crack in our armor that leaves us exposed to harm. In truth, vulnerability is one of the greatest strengths we can possess. It is the willingness to show up, to be seen, and to be real, even when the outcome is uncertain. It's a testament to our courage and our capacity for connection, and it plays a critical role in how we navigate and heal from the pain of being hurt intentionally. When we are hurt, especially intentionally, our first instinct is often to protect ourselves. We might put up walls, shut people out, or even pretend that the pain doesn't exist. This self-protective response is natural. After all, nobody wants to be hurt again, but while those walls may keep others out, they also keep us locked in. They isolate us from the connections and experiences that are essential to healing. Vulnerability, on the other hand, invites us to step beyond those walls. Being vulnerable after being hurt is an act of defiance. It says, I will not let this pain harden me. I will not let this experience define my capacity to love, to trust, or to hope. Vulnerability is not about ignoring the hurt or pretending it didn't happen. It's about facing it head on, acknowledging it, and choosing to move forward with an open heart. At its core, vulnerability is about authenticity. It's about being honest with ourselves and others about what we're feeling. When someone hurts us intentionally, it's tempting to bury those feelings beneath layers of anger, resentment, or indifference. But these emotions often mask what's really going on inside: pain, sadness, disappointment, or fear. Vulnerability allows us to strip away those layers and confront the truth of our emotions. This honesty can be incredibly powerful. When we admit that we're hurt, we give ourselves permission to feel and process those emotions rather than suppressing them. Suppression might seem like the easier option in the short term, but unprocessed pain doesn't just go away, it lingers, festers, and often manifests in other areas of our lives. By being vulnerable, we allow ourselves to heal in a healthier, more sustainable way. Vulnerability also fosters connection. When we share our pain with others, whether it's a trusted friend, family member, or therapist, we create space for empathy and understanding. It's in these moments of shared humanity that we realize we are not alone. Others have been where we are, and they have found a way forward. Their stories remind us that healing is possible, and their support gives us the strength to take the next step. But vulnerability isn't just about opening up to others, it's also about being honest with ourselves. It's about recognizing our needs, our boundaries, and our capacity for forgiveness. It's about saying, I am not okay right now, and that's okay. This self-awareness is a crucial part of the healing process, as it allows us to address our pain rather than running from it. Of course, being vulnerable comes with risks. There's no guarantee that others will respond with the empathy or understanding we hope for. Sometimes our vulnerability may even be met with judgment or rejection. But here's the thing, the act of being vulnerable is not about controlling how others respond. It's about showing up for ourselves. It's about saying, my truth matters even if it's not met with the response I desire. It's what allows us to transform pain into purpose, wounds into wisdom, and hurt into hope. At the heart of many hurtful actions lies a profound tension between two powerful human experiences: empathy and shame. These forces shape how we treat others, how we respond to pain, and how we navigate our relationships. Understanding this dynamic is key to making sense of why people hurt us intentionally and how we can rise above the nature of shame. Shame is a deeply painful emotion. Unlike guilt, which arises from feeling that we've done something wrong, shame goes deeper, telling us that we are wrong, that there's something fundamentally flawed or unworthy about who we are. It's a sense of inadequacy or failure that makes us feel exposed and small. Shame is isolating, and when people are caught in its grip, it often leads to defensive or destructive behaviors. When someone lashes out or intentionally harms another, it's often rooted in their own shame. They might feel inadequate, unloved, or powerless, and instead of addressing those feelings directly, they project their pain outward. Hurting others becomes a way to deflect from their own insecurities. It's a coping mechanism, an attempt to regain a sense of control or superiority by diminishing someone else. But here's the paradox of shame: it thrives in secrecy and silence. The more we hide it, the more powerful it becomes. People who are driven by shame often build walls around themselves, cutting off opportunities for connection and understanding. Their shame doesn't excuse their harmful actions, but it helps us understand why they might act out in ways that are hurtful or cruel. The power of empathy. Empathy is the antidote to shame. It is the ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, to feel with them rather than for them. Empathy creates a bridge of connection, reminding us of our shared humanity. Where shame isolates, empathy unites. Where shame diminishes, empathy uplifts. When we respond to hurtful actions with empathy, we don't condone the behavior, but we seek to understand it. Empathy allows us to see beyond the act itself and consider what might be driving it. This perspective doesn't erase our pain, but it can soften its impact. Instead of internalizing the hurt and asking, what's wrong with me? We begin to ask, what's happening within them? Empathy also helps us break the cycle of pain. When we're hurt, it's natural to want to hurt back, but retaliation often perpetuates the very dynamics we wish to escape. Empathy disrupts this cycle by inviting us to respond differently. It challenges us to see the humanity in those who have wronged us, even when it's difficult. Empathy and boundaries. It's important to note that empathy doesn't mean tolerating abuse or accepting harmful behavior. Empathy and boundaries go hand in hand. We can seek to understand someone's actions without excusing them. We can offer compassion without sacrificing our own well-being. Empathy is not about letting others off the hook. It's about approaching conflict and pain with a mindset that fosters healing rather than division. Setting boundaries is an empathetic act toward yourself. It acknowledges that your feelings and needs matter and that you deserve to be treated with respect. At the same time, empathy toward others helps you enforce those boundaries with kindness rather than hostility. It allows you to say, I see your pain, but I will not let it harm me further. Shame's role in our own healing. While shame often drives harmful behavior, it can also play a role in how we process being hurt. When someone hurts us intentionally, we might find ourselves questioning our worth. We may wonder if we deserve the treatment or if there's something inherently wrong with us. This is shame speaking, whispering lies that keep us stuck in self-doubt and fear.
Empathy, in this case, must also be directed inward. It requires us to extend the same understanding and compassion to ourselves that we might offer to others. It involves recognizing that being hurt says more about the person who caused the pain than it does about us. Empathy for ourselves helps us reject the narrative of shame and embrace a healthier, more empowered perspective. Shame in a broader context. On a societal level, shame often drives systems of oppression, judgment, and exclusion. Entire groups of people are marginalized because society deems them less than based on race, gender, class, or other factors. This collective shaming creates divisions and perpetuates harm on a larger scale. Empathy, however, has the power to dismantle these systems. When we approach others with an open heart and a willingness to understand their experiences, we challenge the stigmas and stereotypes that fuel shame. Empathy invites us to see each other as whole, complex individuals rather than as labels or categories. Choosing empathy over shame. In the face of intentional harm, it's easy to let shame take hold, whether it's the shame of feeling inadequate or the shame of wanting revenge. But choosing empathy is a way of reclaiming our power. It allows us to rise above the hurt and respond with grace and resilience. Empathy doesn't mean we won't feel pain, and it doesn't mean we won't hold others accountable. What it does mean is that we refuse to let shame dictate our actions or define our identity. By choosing empathy, we honor our own humanity and the humanity of others, even when it's difficult. In the end, empathy is a transformative force. It heals wounds, mends relationships, and builds bridges where walls once stood. While shame may seek to divide, empathy brings us closer to the truth of who we are imperfect but deeply worthy of love and connection. Through empathy, we find not just understanding, but also the strength to move forward wiser and more compassionate than before. Setting boundaries is one of the most powerful acts of self-care and self-respect we can engage in, especially when dealing with people who have hurt us intentionally. Boundaries are not about creating barriers to isolate ourselves. They're about defining the limits of what we can accept in our relationships and interactions. They are a way of saying, this is where I end and you begin. In the face of intentional harm, setting boundaries is not just important, it's essential. What are boundaries? At its core, a boundary is a clear and firm line that defines what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior in your life. It's a guidepost for how you want to be treated, a declaration of your values, and a reflection of your self-worth. Boundaries can be physical, emotional, mental, or even spiritual. They may involve limiting the time you spend with someone, refusing to engage in certain conversations, or asserting your right to say no. Boundaries are not about punishing others or shutting them out. Instead, they are about protecting your peace, preserving your energy, and creating a space where you can thrive. Think of boundaries as a fence around your emotional garden. They don't prevent you from connecting with others, but they ensure that what enters your garden, your inner world, is respectful and nourishing. Why are boundaries necessary? When someone hurts you intentionally, it can feel like a violation of your personal space, trust, or dignity. If left unchecked, these actions can have lasting impacts on your emotional well-being, self-esteem, and even your physical health. Boundaries help you reclaim your sense of control in these situations. Boundaries send a powerful message: I value myself enough to protect my peace. They remind you and others that your feelings, needs, and limits matter. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you are shutting out compassion or empathy. It means you are choosing not to let someone's behavior harm you further. Without boundaries, relationships can become unbalanced. People who hurt others intentionally often do so because they feel they can get away with it. Boundaries disrupt this dynamic by making it clear that there are consequences for crossing the line. How to identify the need for boundaries. The need for boundaries often becomes clear through our emotions. If you feel drained, anxious, resentful, or taken advantage of in a particular relationship, it's a sign that your boundaries might need strengthening. Here are some common indicators. Feeling overwhelmed if someone's demands on your time, energy, or emotions feel excessive, it's time to establish limits. Disrespect or abuse, if someone intentionally disrespects or harms you, setting firm boundaries is non-negotiable. Loss of identity, if you find yourself constantly accommodating someone else's needs at the expense of your own, it's a signal to reclaim your space. Emotional manipulation, if someone uses guilt, shame, or fear to control your actions, boundaries are essential to protect your autonomy. Steps to set healthy boundaries. Know your values and needs. Before setting boundaries, it's important to understand what you need and value in your life. Take time to reflect on what makes you feel safe, respected, and valued. These insights will guide you in determining what boundaries to set. Communicate clearly. Effective boundaries require clear communication. Use I statements to express your needs without blaming or attacking. For example, instead of saying, "You're always disrespecting me," you could say, "I feel disrespected when you interrupt me, and I need us to have conversations where we both listen to each other." Be firm yet compassionate. It's natural to feel apprehensive about setting boundaries, especially with people you care about. Remember, setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't value the relationship. It means you value it enough to want it to be healthy. Be kind but firm in your delivery. Follow through on consequences. Boundaries are only effective if you enforce them. If someone crosses your boundary, it's important to follow through with the consequences you've outlined. For example, if you've stated that you'll end a conversation if it becomes disrespectful, you must be prepared to walk away if that happens. Practice self-awareness. Boundaries are not static, they evolve as your needs and relationships change. Regularly check in with yourself to assess whether your boundaries are working or if they need adjustment. Common challenges in setting boundaries. And setting boundaries is not always easy. You might face resistance, especially from people who are used to crossing them. They might react with anger, guilt tripping, or manipulation to maintain the status quo. It's important to stay grounded and remember why you're setting these boundaries in the first place, to protect your well-being. Another challenge is internal guilt. You might worry that setting boundaries makes you seem selfish or unkind, but self-care is not selfish, it's necessary. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and protecting your energy allows you to show up more fully in other areas of your life. Boundaries and healing. Boundaries are a critical component of healing from intentional harm. They allow you to distance yourself from toxic behaviors while maintaining your emotional integrity. They also teach others how to treat you, fostering relationships that are built on mutual respect and understanding. When you set boundaries, you take back your power. You are no longer a passive recipient of someone else's actions. You are an active participant in your own life. This shift in perspective is incredibly empowering and paves the way for deeper self-respect and confidence. The long-term benefits of boundaries. Over time, healthy boundaries lead to healthier relationships. They filter out those who are unwilling to respect you and attract those who value your worth. They create a foundation of trust, safety, and reciprocity, whether in friendships, family dynamics, or romantic partnerships. On a personal level, boundaries reinforce your self-esteem. They remind you that your needs matter and that you have the right to prioritize your well-being. They also reduce stress and resentment, as you no longer feel obligated to accommodate behavior that drains or disrespects you. Boundaries as acts of love. Ultimately, setting boundaries is an act of love both for yourself and for others. When you set boundaries, you model what healthy relationships look like. You create an environment where respect and kindness can flourish, and you give others permission to do the same. In the face of intentional harm, boundaries are your shield, not to isolate yourself from the world, but to protect your capacity to engage with it authentically and wholeheartedly. By setting boundaries, you honor your worth, reclaim your peace, and create the space you need to heal and grow. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. Many believe that to forgive is to excuse or condone harmful behavior. Others view forgiveness as a sign of weakness or as an action that benefits the person who hurt them. However, true forgiveness is a powerful, transformative act that primarily benefits the person who forgives, not the one being forgiven. It is not about forgetting the hurt or pretending it didn't happen. Rather, it is a conscious choice to release the grip that the pain and resentment have over your life. Forgiveness is freedom. One of the most profound aspects of forgiveness is its ability to free us from the chains of anger, bitterness, and resentment. When we are hurt, especially intentionally, we often carry the weight of that pain with us. We might replay the incident in our minds, reliving the hurt over and over, which only serves to deepen the wound. This ongoing focus on the wrongdoing can consume us, leaving us stuck in the past, unable to move forward. Forgiveness is the key that unlocks this cycle. It doesn't erase the past, but it allows us to let go of the emotional burden that the pain has created. When we forgive, we reclaim our emotional energy and release the hold that the offense has on us. We stop giving power to the person who wronged us, choosing instead to take back control of our own emotions and peace. Forgiveness and self-healing. At its core, forgiveness is an act of self-healing. It is not a favor we do for the person who hurt us, but a favor we do for ourselves. Holding on to anger or resentment is toxic. It eats away at our mental, emotional, and even physical health. Chronic resentment can manifest as stress, anxiety, depression, or even physical ailments like headaches or stomach problems. By forgiving, we release the toxins of unresolved hurt, creating space for healing and growth. Forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation or forgetting what happened. It means letting go of the negative emotions that weigh us down. It's about choosing peace over prolonged suffering. In this sense, forgiveness is not about the person who hurt us at all. It's about choosing to stop carrying the burden of pain that belongs to them.